In this video, I thought it might be interesting to address and correct some of the comments that are made against some of my videos. And in this case, I'll be talking about the parking charge notices video, because I was going to do one video about one element, but then I saw lots of other comments, so I thought it might be interesting to correct some of the misunderstandings that so many people seem to have. So first of all, we have UberUU, who says they are a law student, doubts that I'm a barrister, and says, I can tell you one thing for sure, that private companies cannot issue a parking ticket. Well, play on words really. Parking ticket, by which you would only be correct if you're referring to fines, because that would be correct, in that private companies cannot issue you a penalty charge notice, which is a fine. But if you're referring to parking ticket as in any yellow thing that has parking charge notice on it, then absolutely private companies can issue these because they are equivalent to an invoice which is valid so long as the contract was valid and it can be shown that there was valid acceptance of the contract terms, which I'll go into a little bit, no doubt, in this video. Uber goes on to say, and worst cases, DVLA cannot disclose private information to these private companies. But that's not true either, because you can request information about a vehicle and its keeper from the DVLA. And there are two ways of doing this. Firstly, if you are an individual, and secondly, if you are a company that issues parking or trespass charge notices. Respectively, they are the V888 form and the V888/3. The V888 is a form that individuals will file, which is a request by an individual for information about a vehicle. It looks a little bit like this, and it's a request made by that individual, and you have to give your details and the details of the vehicle that you want information about. You have to pay a fee of £2.50, and you'll have to give details as to why you want this information in the first place. Similarly, if you are a company, you will be using a form that looks a bit like this, and you fill out your company details and why you want the information. Moving swiftly on, the next comment from Derek reads, it is very important not to appeal, which implies that you've accepted that they have a right to decide. These are spurious invoices, and if you do not accept them, you must formally reject them. Well, I would actually urge you to use their appeals process, because it is the best way of putting your information across as to why you don't accept the parking charge in the first place. If they reject your appeal, but you still firmly and vehemently want to defend this parking charge notice that you've been given or issued to your vehicle, then you have every right to go to court and fight the parking company over this. But the warning that comes with this is that if you go to court and lose, your liability costs is likely to increase. Dave quite rightly says that companies nearly always follow through going to court for the principle and for deterrent. Of course, not every company is going to follow this all the way through to court, but a significant number of them do, and a significant number of them are successful. Without referring to any one specific comment, there have been a number of comments that have asked the question as to whether the DVLA are complying with data protection when giving out your information. But I'm here to say that the law is firmly on the side of the DVLA in this situation, although they will only give out the information if there is a reasonable case for asking for that information in the first place. And there are a number of examples on the DVLA website as to what these reasons might be. For example, trying to find out who was responsible for an accident. If some other car smashes into you and then drives away, and all you have is the vehicle registration number, then that is a very good reason to want to know the details of the registered keeper of the vehicle, because that's the first port of call when trying to establish who is liable for causing that collision, or alleged to have caused that collision. And so you will want to go to the vehicle registered keeper, who in turn may nominate someone else as the driver on that particular occasion, but that is a very good reason for wanting the details of who is the registered keeper of the vehicle. Also, if a vehicle is abandoned on the side of the road, maybe it's blocking your house, then it becomes necessary to obtain the details of the registered keeper, to contact them to ask them to remove it. But equally, anyone who drives off from, let's say, a petrol station without paying, which is sometimes known as bilking, which is covered under Section 3 of the Theft Act of 1978, which is the offence of making off without payment. Tom Foster says that they must have proof of the driver, not the keeper. So in this case, they don't have to have proof of the driver, although the keeper can nominate someone else as being the driver, and the parking company should then only contact who is supposedly the driver of the vehicle vehicle rather than the keeper. And of course, if everybody disputes it, then the matter can go to court and everybody can bring their evidence to court as to who is really responsible for the parking charge. And this is provided in Schedule 4 of the Protection of Freedoms Act of 2012. Specifically, paragraph 4 of Schedule 4 provides that the creditor has the right to recover unpaid parking charges from the keeper of the vehicle. But there are various conditions that apply to this, including in sub 4, the right under this paragraph may only be exercised after the end of the period of 28 days, beginning with the day on which the notice to keeper is given. Other comments went on to talk about the formation of the contract and whether this is a valid formation of a contract when you drive onto a car park and at what point this contract materializes. Well, indeed, there have been a number of cases that have looked at this, including Thornton and Shoe Lane parking way back to 1970. And in this case, the court was looking at whether terms could be incorporated after the entry point of a car park once a ticket had been paid for, because after that point there was no going back, so to speak. So the court held that further terms could not be incorporated into the contract after the point of payment, particularly if they are onerous, because they should have been brought to the person's attention before they entered the contract and had the free choice as to whether or not to contract in the first place. But taking a very normal example of this, if you drive onto a car park and there are signs at the entrance and all around the car park, and you park your car and then you pay for a ticket and you overstay, then providing those signs were clear enough and there is a parking charge for overstaying your welcome in the car park, then it's extremely unlikely that the court's going to conclude that there was no contract there, because you've parked your car and paid for a ticket. Contrast this with a situation if you drive onto the car park, you see the signs there which tell you what the charges are, you think to yourself you don't like that very much, so you turn the car around and you leave the car park immediately, and then let's say you get a parking charge notice through the post to say that you were in the car park for 2.5 minutes and you didn't pay. This is much more likely to be challenged on the basis that you did not form the contract in the first place, because you considered the options, you considered the terms, and you chose not to contract. You didn't park, you didn't pay, and you didn't stay. So in that case, the court is very much more likely to conclude that there was no contract and this parking charge would not be enforceable. So as I very often say in my videos, it always depends on all of the facts and all of the circumstances of the case. It's very rare that two cases are identical, and indeed your circumstances can change even if you're in the same place. So I hope this was a useful response to some of the comments and questions in the comments box. Give me a thumbs up if you like these kind of responses, and make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching.